Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome back to the Spiritual Underground podcast. As always, my name is Dan Reeves. I am your host here, going on quite a few years doing this podcast, and we're primarily 12-step recovery based content. But I have people coming on the show of late and for a while that bring different angles, and I like to hear that. There was one man's voice some years ago that I could hear, like they spoke on my frequency, and why that was, I don't understand, but I think we all have that. Like, you might hear the same thing over and over and over again, and it doesn't touch you, and then the right voice says it, and you go bing, and you're, oh, I get it now. And so I like having that variety of folks coming on the show, because we're all just talking about, being the best human and getting as much as we can get out of this ride on this big blue marble day by day. And there's various ways to do that, probably limitless ways to do that. And my guest today, James Robbins, is coming on here to talk about what he has found in his journey, because I did look at that, and everybody, there's a path, right? There's a path for everybody. And it's finding it and following it seems to be the question. How's it going today, James?
Dan, fantastic. And thanks for having me on your show. And this is really an honor.
Yeah, it's so cool to be meeting all these people out there, like I said a minute ago, and this is why I don't like to have that small talk at the beginning, because I will revert back to what was said. But to get to meet all these cool people that's out in the world carrying lanterns of light, they're out there carrying their message and trying to help other people. And sometimes that can be hard to see if you're not looking in the right places. And there's so many of us out there trying to just help our fellow humans find that path.
100%. I think it's almost a universal question people ask, like, what am I supposed to be doing with my life? And we tend to ask that usually when we're, not happy or having a bad day, but it's a question that haunts everyone at some point. What am I supposed to be doing? And it's not always a clear answer. What's clear is we know what we don't want to do, right? That's clear. But it's figuring out what we want to do and then having the courage actually to do it.
I forgot to do not disturb my telephone here, and it's buzzing at me. Get that thing out of the way. In 12-step recovery, where we develop a higher power we can depend upon, rely upon, build a relationship with. A lot of people get it confused with religion. It can be, if that works for you, if it doesn't. But to go along with what you said, a lot of times I don't know what my higher power wants me to do, but I almost always know what my higher power does not want me to do. I can go, yeah, Dan, and I think back over my whole life, and I think about how many times that little tap on the back had said, Dan, you probably ought not be doing this. And I didn't, time after time after time, I didn't listen to it. I listened to it today.
For sure. What a lot of people don't know about me is, well, I grew up on a small cattle ranch, but I ended up becoming a preacher, which was never in my plans, never in my family. But, life takes crazy turns for us. I did that for a lot of years. And so I understand the religion part, and there can be a lot of rules to that. But at the end of the day, I still come back to whether you want to believe in a higher power or God or whatever word you would want to use. I believe there's a reason we're all here. And it's not necessarily to do something, but it's more to be someone.
Yeah.
And for a lot of years, I struggled to think like, well, what's my purpose in life? I felt very purpose driven. So I was always thinking, even when I worked in the church, I was thinking, oh, should I go, I don't know, build schools in some other country? But I've come to realize that, again, the purpose in your life is really to bring the most authentic, honest version of you to this planet. And as you say, this blue marble. And that's really your gift to the world. And when you have that as your purpose, you'll end up doing a lot of things that are great and serve humanity, but you'll feel more in alignment.
Yeah, yeah, that's recovery, and this is I've had some great teachers and great speakers talking. It's been more of getting rid of who I am not so much of finding who I am. I got buried in stuff that wasn't really me, and this path here has gotten to be where I think another one of the little things was is like when I moved around the world. Of according to what it was a chameleon type thing. I was this guy when I was here, and I was this guy when I was here, and now I can pretty honestly say that everybody that meets me meets the same guy, no matter what hat I happen to be wearing today. You know, if it's we were talking about last night that old, you know, some of these little sayings get, you know, overused, whatever, get a little tired, but we're human beings, not human doings. And the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous, has a few statements in it where it talks about what are you to be? And then it gets confused, you know, and that, I think it was beautiful. In 1939, he wrote that in that way of who am I to be, not what am I to do. There's a very slight difference in that, but I like the energy behind it. So when you first flashed on here, you had looked like it was a avatar and it had ice in a beard.
Yeah. Yeah, that was just a pic from the mountains on a snowy day, and I thought, let me just snap this shot. But my team thought it was a good photo for some of the social media. So
Yeah, I liked it. Group of our fellows go out a little past Granby and Grand Lake area every September, and they go out there and chase elk. And it's all members of my home group, and it's not an every year thing for me. I've been twice in the 6 times they went. So we drive right through your area. You said you're in Denver now, and you said you
yeah.
grew up in, did you say Canada?
I did, just north of Montana. Grew up in the foothills of the Rockies, and the mountains have always just been something for me that's meant a lot. My father used to take me out to the mountains to fish or hunt elk, and it's really become a metaphor for my life. I think it's actually a metaphor for a lot of people. And I always say that we're born to climb. We're born to walk uphill. When we don't have something to strive for and make progress on, then we lose a sense of purpose and feeling good. So, but there's the other part of us that doesn't want to do anything hard, right? Doesn't want to step out of our comfort zone, whether that's the emotional comfort zone or a physical one to, get up early and go work out. But the other part of us, that deeper part, the part I call a soul,
Mm-hmm.
the soul is seeking expansion, it's seeking growth, it's seeking its potential, its expression. Sort of like I view it like the soul is like this an oak seed, and
Mm-hmm.
its desire is to become an oak tree. And it'll do a lot of things when it's an oak tree, but that's not really the point. The point is just to become it. And I think we're like that. So, back to the mountains, I think that I spent a lot of my life kind of wondering, almost like wandering around base camp, always wondering what am I supposed to be doing, and feeling a call to go up one mountain, but at the same time wondering, but what would everyone think if I did that? And that held me back for a lot of years. So kind of like you said, how you used to go meet different people, they would meet a different Dan, and now they just meet the one. I think that's, and if the world could learn that lesson from you and make that change, wow, we would have evolved for sure.
Yeah, I've learned. I have a fantastic AA sponsor. It's been sober 41 years and been in the. He's a substance and addiction. What you would say substance now today it's substance use disorder counselor, and and we're this theory of what I'm born perfect, right? When I come out of the womb, most, there's flaws in some people, whatever, this and that. But like if you meet me when I was 3 years old, I didn't have a care in the world, man. I wanted what I wanted and I told you. And if I wasn't getting what I wanted, I would voice that. And then over time you learn like you get constrained and you start getting put in like a silo or something where you start getting and then you start learning I got to be this way, I got to be that way. Um, and I think that's a little bit of everybody's life's journey. That's just the way the human experience is. And I think at some level our job is to bust out of that. And and there's you see this path of going around and starting to learn to be, you know, as I said, shed all the stuff that I am not and get back to that real soul spirit, figure out what this really is inside and cultivate it and move forward and show it to people. Right? That's the hard part.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's a little bit like when you're little, everyone else is writing in your book of who you are and
Mm,
what you're supposed to be. And at some
I
point
like
they
that.
hand you the book and then you're just reading from the script, but at some point you start to go, "Wait, this doesn't quite fit. Like I don't want to play this part." And I think the real shift happens in life when we get the courage to kind of take the pens back from everyone and just go, "Yeah, I'll take it from here. Like let me write."
Yep.
And
Next chapter is mine.
exactly. And that's been the journey, I can think of my own life. That's the journey I'm on is figuring out, well, what do I want to do? And Dan, that's actually one of the hardest questions for people to answer. Like, what do you
Yes,
want? Like,
it
what do you
is.
mean? What do I? No, what do you
We
want?
we don't even know,
Yeah.
and
Some
that's
people
the
are like, what am I allowed to want? Oh
yeah.
no, like what do you want? Right? And it just takes a while to start to get back in touch with that.
Yeah. I see that for men, I see this window. It seems to be someplace in the 35 to 40 year range where they go, oh man, what's behind me is not working for me anymore, and I'm desiring something else. I see people do, I'm a little bit of a one-trick pony in the recovery world, but I see those guys that'll hit their bottoms in that window, and sometimes it means a complete career change. Sometimes it means, like a complete change of personality, and you get tied into who, your identity. We were talking about that yesterday about like if I've been working in a job for a while, I begin to think that's who I am, right? Okay, that's who I am, and that's not usually who you are. It might be, but you kind of I watch men break, kind of, I don't know, hit a wall. A bottom is what we call it, and the drugs and alcohol and stuff will help accelerate that. uh, but
For
even
sure.
in normal life, because we do this, we the other podcast we do, we it's called the I Am One Two podcast, and it's not unique to alcoholics and addicts. It's not. It's all of us. We find, like you said, I love that analogy. Somebody wrote scripts for me, and I've been following them scripts just out of hand. I hit the jackpot in the dad department. That's unusual for dudes that's in recovery because most of them did not. But I did, and he lives with me now. Just a minute ago, he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm getting ready to do a podcast." He said, "All right, shut my door." And he knows that he goes up there and he lives upstairs at my house, 87, and I hit the jackpot in that, but I still couldn't, like, everything he demonstrated to me. There were still things that he put into me that didn't work for me. And I've had to unlearn some of that stuff. And it's a little difficult to do that because I love him so much. And I want to kind of reject the fact that maybe some of the things he uh, accidentally taught me are not working for me. That it wasn't that they were bad lessons. It wasn't that it was anything, some of them are actually positive deals. But I'm a little bit too, I've heard Chris Williamson on the internet talk about productivity debt, and I'm a little bit overproductive. I have to learn and have to practice to slow down. Say, hey, this afternoon I can not do anything, and that's okay. And that's something I got from my dad because I thought I needed to be busy in order to earn his approval.
Yeah, I hear you. We sound like we have similar fathers. When you talked about the mid 30s, I went through that as well. I crashed and burned, and
Mm.
that's where I stumble on this work by James Hollis. He's a like a Jungian psychoanalyst, and he talks about the collision of selves. And he says there's that first self that the one that has sort of been programmed by society and your family and your parents of who you are. You don't really even question it because you're just in life trying to get ahead, trying to, buy a house. But then at some point, that second self comes along, right? And that's that soul, that's that inner life, the psyche. And that's the one that starts to ask the questions like, hey, is this what we're supposed to be doing? Is this the right mountain to climb? And I don't know that this is it. And, the soul begins to nudge us. And Dr. Hollis talks about how the soul summons us to have an appointment, to have a meeting. But most people, we reject the appointment. We ignore it. We just keep plowing ahead. And I did that. And because it's scary to listen to the soul because at that point you have to start really taking responsibility for your life. Okay,
Right.
I'm going to live this life. And that's going to mean usually going off in a bit different direction than everyone's used to, not always. Um, you know, the ego is so much, the ego is so concerned of what the herd, what the tribe thinks of us. The soul doesn't care. The soul just, again, seeks that expansion, that expression. Like, let's bring the full you to the world. And, but that's dangerous business, at least to the ego.
Yeah, it is. It's an interesting thing we do, and I don't, it sounds a little arrogant at times, but I feel like I operate on a different plane than like as I walk through the grocery store and I walk through places, and it's kind of like an autopilot, and that's what I look at my first bunch of years for a long time. It was just like moving through to the whim of whatever catalyst I bumped into. I didn't have any like agency, self-agency, be able to choose my own path and be able to do stuff. It was felt and of course the dope and the booze didn't help, and that I love it used because that's what a lot of people will ask me, and I say I crashed and burned on the dope and the booze. I did, and that's what happened to me. And I was stood in front of a judge here in my hometown, told me I was going to Indiana Department of Corrections for 6 to 20 years, and that got my attention.
I
But
bet.
like,
Yeah, that would.
hey, what I'm doing ain't working. This is not the path I want to move forward on. And listen to other stuff like you said, that appointment. I like that too. That like there is an appointment, and you get tapped on the shoulder. That's the way I look at it today. I'm almost like tapped on the shoulder at times and said, "Hey, think about doing it." That's how the podcast happened, was a
Yeah.
tap on the shoulder that you should do that. So and there was a lot of weirdness, who am I? Imposter syndrome stuff and everything, all kind of ego wanting me to say I'm not worthy and nobody will listen and all that. And it's scary to move into new territory.
It is. And, back to the point about, I think especially with men and fathers, this idea of really taking agency of your life, like really taking ownership of your life. And, for me, my father, he's about to turn 87 and very strong, very hard worker. Like if I would take a long weekend, this even happened a few years ago. I went up to visit them and it was a long weekend. So I took the long weekend off, and he made a comment about it that my brother was working hard. What am I doing? Right. So, but my father was a hard worker, but he also got educated, became a lawyer. And there was some pressure there about going to law school.
Mm.
And I purposely didn't go to law school because he wanted me to go to law school. So in that moment, I thought, this is me choosing my path, right? I'm not going to go to law school. But really, he was still in many ways controlling me because I wasn't making the decision of what I actually wanted to do, just that I didn't want to do what he wanted me to do. So not that he was controlling it, but he was still influencing it more than I would have wondered. And that's really when we can get to that place, Dan, when we are, this is what I'm doing, not to spite someone, not for them, just for me, actually. This is what I'm going to do. And I think that's a hard place to get to, actually. And especially, you know, we can think we're being selfish or irresponsible, or, I mean, we can be those things, but um, it really does take a lot of courage to take stock and think, no, I'm going to make a change.
Yeah, that's use the word selfish, and again, in my literature, we say selfishness, self-centeredness, that's the root of our troubles because I have been just absorbed with me and my wants, right?
Hmm.
But that's, you know, again, man, it's a pendulum. It's a double-edged sword. It's the both sides of the coin kind of stuff, that can work for me or against me. And I have to learn to put those things together where it's a good balance of both because I need to take care of me, but I also need to be caring about you and the people that are around me and attending to that stuff too. I can't isolate myself and just go, turn back into that 3-year-old I was talking a minute ago. I'm going to do what I want to do. And I giggle
For
about that
sure.
because my dad, we will talk about things. When I got laid off in 2019, I had no idea what I was going to do. And I had totally undervalued this skill set I had of being able to fix things. I am good if it's your range, your stove, if it's your door that sticks, if it's this whole broad range of what I file, it's handyman, and that's kind of a little funny thing. But I run around here for the last 6 years and made a living going to people's houses and fixing their things.
Yeah,
And how I
that's
learned
wonderful.
that was from dad, right?
Yeah.
And we would sit down and talk about how to go about things. I would share with him, hey, I got this going on. And whenever he would go into me and I felt myself revert back to that 3 year old, I'm gonna do it my own self. I don't help me. I don't want help. Don't tell me, don't correct me. I know how to do it. And I can smile at myself in that. And that's some of that training stuff that's a weird, like you said, when your dad tells you to do something or you should, I like, don't tell me what to do.
Yeah, for sure. And the ego in that part of us that's the flesh, if it just does what it wants, then of course that's going to be selfish. But there's that deeper part of all of us that we know what's right for us. And it's not a selfish thing because
Right.
it will always result in impacting a life. I like to think of it as we're all born with a song to sing that no one else can sing. And when we don't sing it, the world doesn't get to hear it. It's just figuring out what that is. And, I use this expression sometimes about how what I call the divine signature, which is the fact that every single person is different. It's just a message at your fingertips. I mean, I can just look at my fingerprints and know that there's not another person on the planet now or ever that's had this design. Even if you have an identical twin, they don't have the same. So that that sends the message to me, we're here for a reason. And it's my reason's going to be different than your reason, Dan, and your reason's going to be different than, someone else's reason. And that's a wonderful thing. That gives me a lot of hope when things are tough that there's purpose for me. And it's to bring me to this world.
Yeah, I like the fingerprint thing, and I say the same thing about our soul and our spirit. There's nobody like me in this world, and there's nobody like you
Mm,
in this world. But you and I can also sit here and connect on similar issues of dad stuff and mountains and these things. That's so cool that we all have our unique things, and uh, it's finding that and getting a hold of it and embracing it.
yeah. And what I love about what you're doing is, people we all need to get strength. And what strengthens us is not perfection. What strengthens us is when we hear stories of people who share our struggles. And it took me a long time to learn that, right? I was always trying to, put this polished face forward, foot forward. And even when I was speaking on stage, the more I started to share the behind the scenes stuff, the struggles, the challenges, that's when people lean in. That's when people, because then you become relatable. It's one of the ways we influence, right? By having the courage to share part of our journey.
Yeah, that's I'm always tickled about how all these people I talk to, it's parallel reasoning, right? All this stuff is the same thing. And again, the big book talks about how like our darkest secrets and our worst things we could ever think of end up being some of our strongest assets for connecting with somebody else. And in the way that you go, okay, hey, I went through this, and people go, "Oh wow, you mean you can actually be open? You can talk about that. You can say you had that happen to you and do it without even like looking like it bothers you anymore." And you get that kind of like the Me Too movement thing. It happens here where I share with a guy that this happened to me, and you'll see this relief shed over them that they're no longer feeling like they're the only one that happened to.
Yeah. Helps
Carrying
people
our
drop the
stories.
mask.
Yep, them. Yep, the masks.
I have a good friend who is out of Georgia, and he was a preacher who then crashed and burned and went through a divorce, went into alcohol, drugs, then had to go through recovery, came back, just wanted to be a preacher again. And that's tough when you're a preacher and then you crash and burn, then to come back. But he did. And not all the preachers were excited about him coming back, but who
Mm.
was excited? All the people in the congregation, as they would hear his story. It was like he became their favorite preacher. because he was just so raw, so honest, so real, and they could relate with the story and the struggle. And it's a little bit like from the Good Book when David, before he was King David, was being chased by Saul and found refuge in the cave of Adullam. And it said all the people who were in debt and disconnected rallied around him, and they just hung out together. And that same motley crew ended up becoming, the leaders of the nation years later. But there's there's camaraderie, right, in struggle. There's camaraderie in imperfection. And man, the more we try to be perfect, we actually just isolate.
Yeah. Yeah, the Bible's full of those stories. I'm not at all going to claim to be a dude who knows about it, but I relate to it. And I was fortunate enough to have a friend that touched me a long time ago that said that it's okay to, he said, I draw from all the ancient spiritual teachings.
Yeah.
And if you don't, you're handicapping yourself. But over and over again is the struggle and the down and out, and those kind of stories are the ones that end up being what ends up impacting those around them. I joke around and say, we talk. People ask me what I do. You get that right when you're in a.
Yeah.
What do you do? And I do recovery. And I'm able to say that today. That's what I do. I do some other things to make money, keep the lights on, pay the insurance. I got some things I do to make all that happen. But
Yeah.
really what I do, and to be free enough to be able to state that, and it almost always will end up being some kind of thing that ends up, I, my uncle, my brother, my oh, you too? I'm in recovery too,
Yeah.
and you just when you're able to let down your guard a little bit, people relate to that. We
Yeah.
don't like the perfect dude.
Yeah.
He's
And what's
no value to me.
exactly. And what's beautiful about what you're doing, Dan, is that I talked about this in the book where this idea of, your purpose is again, it's just to bring you to the world, but your worthy pursuit, that's what everyone thinks about. Like what am I supposed to do? Well, there's 1,000 things you can do that will be in alignment with your soul. And what you just said, I do recovery. Like this is a worthy pursuit for you, even though, yeah, I got a job, I got to make money, got to keep the lights burning. But what I do is recovery. And that's exactly what I talk about.
Yeah, it's and sometimes you step in it, when you tell
For
somebody
sure.
that. But oh well, it's worth it overall, and uh there's just is nothing in the world to me, for me, that fulfills me more than when a dude comes downtrodden, is broken, she's leaving him, he's about to lose his job, maybe he already had, and all that, and I can say, I have a path. Follow me, and we can get you back on track, man. And I can guarantee that today. A man some time ago said, I can guarantee you that if you'll work these 12 steps and practice these principles in your life is going to get better. I don't know how much better, but I guarantee that will happen. And at that time, I did the old one thing you guarantee, death and taxes is the only thing guaranteed, and but now I can actually say that to people that I come across, because I can guarantee it. If they will walk this walk with me, they will get better, and things will, and it's just so cool to, my the spiritual underground is the name of my men's AA home group.
Yeah.
It's the meeting name. All AA meetings have a name. And that's how this podcast began, because some of us thought it would be cool to begin to create a podcast. And I'll quote one of my friends, Kevin. He said, Dan, I'm sorry, but I don't have time for this shit. And there, like you said, it takes some energy and things, man. I felt compelled to keep this going. And but where I'm going with that is that Colorado trip is a group of our people.
Yeah.
Every spring, I have a men's retreat at a place I have out in the country, and we get together and we commune as men, and we cry and we share, and we come together. And this group of men is something that I never knew I was missing it. I kind of chased it in high school sports and other things like that. But I never was, there was always back then not able to like actually be authentic with one another. And now I'm watching these guys who are like me, looking at prison time, looking at other things, that are, productive. I celebrated a guy's 6 year sobriety the other night that I sponsor, and his wife got up and shared. We allow people to come into we allow family members and stuff to come on birthday nights, and just touch the whole group with what it meant to her from her husband being who he used to be, shedding all that, and the man he is today. It's like, how cool is that, that you get an opportunity no matter how far down you think you are, what kind of stuckness you're in, there is a way to dig out of that.
Absolutely. And I can't help as you're talking, I don't know if you connect the dots about your own life in that, you do recover. You said, I love when someone is wanting to get better and I can help be part of that process. And earlier you said, well, I go from house to house to house fixing things, right? Getting them on track. It's like you're in the same business. It's the restoration business of sometimes it's soul, sometimes it's physical things. So it's a beautiful, beautiful thing you're doing. To
Yeah,
your
I'm
point
good at
about the,
fixing things, and sometimes that's even people. Now, I don't personally, it's not good for me to take personal credit for actually fixing them,
I
right?
understand.
This is the process and the higher power and this all that. But yeah, I'm good at fixing things.
Yeah, no, I understand. I mean, it's in your soul, so good for you. The point about the men's thing. This is a regret I told my son. I said, most of my life I didn't retain some of my close friends from high school, and even the friends I had during life, which I still have them. For a lot of years, we just didn't see each other. We were just so busy, and only in the last few years we started doing trips,
Mm.
usually every other year, sometimes every year. And we would just, one time we went to Guatemala, we went to Iceland last year. We just planned these trips together. It's just the guys, and it's so great, like just to get away with other men, because the world isn't always designed for men to share vulnerably and
Yeah.
openly. Um, so yeah, it's an important part of every man's cycles to have that.
I think it's something that's missing. It's whatever's happened in life in this world we have. The men communing the way that we used to on hunting parties that were, and other things like that. Back when it was essential, right? It wasn't.
Yep.
It wasn't like an option back then.
Yeah.
Somebody had to go out and get some meat and bring it in, or everybody's starving. And I'm sure that was happening then at some level where they were communing like that. And that's what I said, like about retreat. We go out in the woods. We don't take showers. We cook meat over fires and eat it and swim and fish and just be dudes together. And I need that in my life. I need those pieces. The same thing with the Colorado trip and these other things that we do. I get, I've had a couple of times. I had a client that as you can tell, I'm a little chatty, and I'm working for this gal, and I'm telling her about my friends just in conversation, you know. Just as I'm working, she's standing there. She's a little bit hovering over me, I don't particularly care for that, but when you're standing there, I'm going to talk to you. And she stopped for a minute, and she said, how is it that you have so many male friends? And she's from Canada. She's actually moved down here. Her husband is a rock star, as a matter of fact, a pretty famous one. I had no idea. But it was interesting that she found that odd. You could see the puzzlement in it that, how do you have all these male friends? And of course, then the ice gets broken. You go, well, I'm in recovery and we get too many points for being in recovery. It's a funny thing that you crash and burn and you rise from the ashes and you get more props than a dude that's been doing the right thing all along.
Yeah, I understand that. I think it's the courage to it's the courage to make those steps to improve your life. Everyone's going to applaud that. It's a little bit like the prodigal son. That reminds me of the story of the prodigal son who went away, crash and burn, and came back and there was a party. And then the guy who's been doing the right thing all the time was like, "Where's my party?" So
Yeah, it is exactly like that. Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
Tell me about the book.
Yeah, the book's coming out. It's the title is The Call to Climb. It really sprang from my own crash and burn story, but it is in a story format about this person who stumbles into this remote village in the Andes Mountains in South America, and they're lost, and they find out that this village has been expecting them because they've been called to climb. There's a special mountain that you're called to climb when you're out of sync with your soul. And you're called to climb because your soul wants to have a conversation with you and you can no longer avoid the appointment. So it's all about a mountain climb and retaking back your life. And that really is where the essence of the book comes from, that we're called to climb, but not someone else's journey, our journey. And it's tricky figuring that out sometimes when we got all this programming and societal pressure and norms, and that having the courage to be authentic. And what does that mean? What does that look like? So that's what the book's about. It's very different than my last book, which was a corporate leadership book. So this one is definitely more on the spiritual side. It's not a religious book, it's just a spiritual book. And I'm excited about it. I'm rarely happy with anything I create. It's always a
Um,
problem I find with it, but this one I'm really happy.
it's funny how self-critical we are.
Yeah.
I also have a wood shop in my backyard, and I make stuff, and I'm too critical on the things I make, and when I make it, people are just blown away and they love it, right? And I've learned that there's an old saying about the woodworker is not it's um, how to correct the mistakes rather than that you made them, right? I'm not going to make anything without making some mistakes, but can you tell, right? And I had
Yeah.
to learn to don't go, well, see right here, it's not exactly
Exactly.
perfect right here because they don't care.
Isn't that
The,
amazing that we do that? Like we give a gift and then we point out all the flaws
yeah.
because we don't want to believe their words that this is amazing. And you're like, well, it's actually not amazing because here's the five mistakes. But yeah, to your point, they don't see them. It
No,
is
they're right
amazing.
there over and over. Yep. And the same thing, I can't imagine like the struggles you go through with the word by word and the writing. And is this stated is this right? Is this good enough? Word by line of that kind of thing is my sponsor is the author as well, and he writes, and that's what he does. And I didn't understand it when I first met him, but he goes home after work and he sits down and he fires up the computer and he writes all evening. Uh, not every day, but these certain days of the week, and he is devoted to it and he's devoted to his craft, and whether if somebody buys it or not is not his concern, although you can't help but at some level want that too, right? But I don't know if there's anything harder than writing.
Well, I don't. So here's the thing. I don't think I'm a good writer. I think I'm a good storyteller. I don't think I'm a good writer. In fact, when I wrote my first book and the publisher McGraw-Hill called me, they said, "Hey, we're going to publish your book." The first question I asked them is, "Well, did you read it?" Like because obviously if you read it, you would know that I suck as a writer. Like that was my legitimate first question. So if like truth be told, Dan, if I was invited to a room with a bunch of other authors, I'm gonna feel like I don't belong here. Like, I'm the least that should be here. But that's
Isn't that
just my
funny
own
how we are that
insecurities.
way, that human condition thing? And I think that
Yeah,
could probably be said. You could probably put Tom Brady in a room full of quarterbacks and he would probably think that he's not worthy.
for sure, for sure. There's an upside though to that imposter syndrome is that at least for me over my career, it's focused me to get better because I think, man, I don't belong in this room. I better study, right? Or I better learn, or I better, that's the upside of it. But, as I've gotten older, uh, I've grown a lot in those areas. If I could go back in time, that's probably the one biggest lesson I would say to myself is like, trust yourself. Even if you get it wrong, you will figure it out and you'll land on your feet. And because you did, right? Over the next 30 years, you made a lot of mistakes, but you always land on your feet. You always figured it out, and just know you always will. So don't stress. That's the advice I'd give myself.
Yeah. I had this, I've had some just some super cool things happened in my life, and one of them is a guy I listen to on the internet. I don't know if you've ever Googled AA speakers.
No, I haven't.
You can't believe how much content. It's like the original podcast. I'm talking
Wow.
about from the 50s, 60s. As long as they've had recording devices, they have been
Amazing.
recording people's recovery stories and the wisdom that people have gained through that. And one of those guys talked in my frequency, right, some years ago. And I've developed a relationship with the dude. The world put us together. Just to come back to Tom Brady, if you were a high school quarterback, and Tom Brady called you up and asked you to come over, that's the way I feel about this guy. He's just and now I have a relationship with him, and we're heck, he's coming up here not too long, and he's coming up here this month. Heck, it's August 1. He's coming up here this month. I'm taking fishing. He's 82. Uh, but where I'm going at is he talks about that his life is his assignment in life is to make mistakes, because otherwise, how do you learn and how do you get better? So he doesn't worry about himself, and of course, with that kind of age, you do gain some wisdom, right? And I love that he talks that way about my job is to make mistakes. It's to make mistakes, learn from them, teach others about the mistake I made, share it with other people, and then go on to make the next mistake. Uh, yeah,
Love that.
I do. He's touched me from the beginning. You said something earlier too, and that's the thing about these conversations that get tough to wind around on. The spiritual, not religious thing. That's another thing. Like I have a spirit inside of me, and I was going there earlier. You have a spirit inside of you, and that's more of how I think about spiritual healing. That actually I allowed that to get sick, for lack of a better way to say it. I let outside influences make me something that I really wasn't. And by the spiritual walk, I'm able to like clean and shed the stuff that I'm not, to get back to well, basically like that 3-year-old without the attitude, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
for sure. I think of one of the things I talk about is for people to create a spiritual vision for their life. And so this goes in line with, kind of your soul. And a spiritual vision is not the things you want to accomplish, like your dream house in the mountains or $2 million in the bank or the X2 car. Those goals are all fine, but the spiritual vision is having that map, that compass for your life, which is usually going to be around certain roles or what's important to you. Like for me, one part of my spiritual vision is what does it mean to be a father of adult children? Because I have 3 kids, all in college, and so what you do with creating a spiritual vision is you think of these major parts of your life that are important. So again, I'll stick with the adult children, and I'm their father. That's an important role to me. But I ask the question, but what do I believe about being a parent of an adult children? Like, not what my parents tell me, not what the preacher says, but what do I believe? What do I believe is important in that role? Why do I believe that? And then what's my commitment? What's my commitment to my kids as an adult or with them being adults? And so when I get clear on that, because that's not a goal you ever get to, right? That's not a mountain you summit. It's just that's part of the journey. But living an intentional life is when we can have clear commitments with some compelling reasons and then revisit those again and again. And you know this from the recovery world, right? That idea of auditing your life constantly. And, another one of my commitments is as a friend, right? To be loyal, to be supportive, to be a cheerleader. So if 2 weeks go by and I haven't reached out to one of my close friends, I'm not keeping my commitments, right? So it's, it's, um, it's an important exercise to do, but it really forces you to get clear on what are your commitments in life. You can't have too many of them, or you'll be overloaded. But I have commitment to my soul. I have a commitment to create wealth for my kids, for my freedom to be generous. I have a commitment to health, right? So my commitments don't have to be someone else's commitments, but it's a great question. What are your commitments? And they should be tied to your spiritual vision. And when you have that, then hey, everything else is going to take care of itself, right? You just keep going down that road. And it reminds me of who's that guy? Anthony. Who's the singer? The guy that's like hillbilly, but he just blew up and became real famous. But
Yeah, the guy with the yeah, Anthony Oliver.
yeah, Anthony Oliver. His song that I don't got a dollar, but I don't need a dime. That's that's exactly that, right? Like, um, I grew up where money was just like you need money, and if you're not making money, and um, what, life humbled me to get me to a point where, okay, I don't have a dollar, but I don't need a dime. That was the hard one to get to. It's like
Yeah.
it's easy to get to I don't have a dollar, but it's hard to get to I don't need a dime, right? So,
Yeah.
but when you have a strong spiritual vision, okay, then what's really important to me?
Yeah. I like that compass reference, I'm a certified yoga teacher. I'd have
Are
never
you?
thought that I'd done,
Good for
my
you.
favorite joke is like prior to that, if you'd have said I was going to be a yoga teacher, I'd have punched you in the nose, thought you was calling me a sissy. Uh,
If
but
only, yeah, that's amazing.
And it's been great for me, man. There's something about, and I do this really high impact, high intensity yoga that just fits for me, man. And I do it 3, 4 times a week, man. It just makes me feel, I walk the earth feeling like I'm powerful, you know, and it's functional strength too, allows me to do silly little things like hold my arms up over my head for a long time while I swap out a ceiling fan, you know,
Amazing.
and just but my point there is that they taught me about this my true north in the compass reading thing. And that's where that concept got. And you were talking about that, and finding that for you
Yeah.
is part of the challenge, really, is trying to figure out where. And I think you got to try a lot. You might have to try a lot of different things to find
Yep.
that, right? You go, okay, this ain't it. Okay, I'm gonna try playing guitar. Nope, that ain't it. I'm gonna but if you'll keep trying, I believe that whatever happens in this universe, this higher power, whatever you want to call it, the universe will guide you if you keep trying. And that's kind of like the doing part of it. We say we're not a human doing, but you do have to take some action. 12-step recovery, another cliche, and it's a program of action. You had to take some action because if you just sit stagnant, and that's the thing about the base camp, like you was talking about. Okay, I can walk that way and go hunting, or I can go up that way. All right, and I can just sit there and camp and drink coffee, right?
Yeah.
Deciding
Yeah.
on and not do anything. But at some point, you got to set the coffee cup down and walk up that mountain. And if it's the
Yeah.
wrong one, you learn. And it's rarely ever the wrong one. You get something out of it one way or the other. Um,
I love that you became a yoga teacher. And if I went to study to become a yoga teacher, there's part of me that would really like that. And there's another part of me that would think my father would like roll his eyes at this, right? And so this is where those parental figures really shape our path. And again, the call to climb is about no, but trying a lot of different things and whatever really created great energy for you, awesome, do it. And it doesn't matter what your dad would think or mom would think, or it really is tuning in to what's going on inside. Like Dr. Hollis, when he said, when the path is right, the energy is there.
mm.
And I love that quote because, man, there's a lot of times the energy's not there. So maybe that says something about my path.
Yeah, when I feel like I'm swimming upstream, I usually have to take note of that, and go, well, maybe I need to reconsider this particular path. Because when I'm in my true north, it does somewhat, I know we got the mountain climbing thing, but it also feels like it's downhill. It flows when I'm got myself aligned with that. Like Dad, you know, today he loves that I'm a yoga dude. And I'd have said the same thing, And like this productivity deal, when I go to, I'll tell you, I'm gonna go down, kick my feet up, and stare at the inside of my eyelids for a little bit. He'll go, that sounds like a great idea. And, but at the same time, I got that whole productivity. He didn't put that on me. I took it on, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't really him. And that's one of the things I've learned. I thought that I would receive his approval by being a busybody and getting lots of stuff done. And now, and later in life, I realized that was all an illusion. He never felt that way. He was proud. All he was proud of me for doing it. He was just trying to encourage me. And he was proud of me no matter what I did, but I took it on that I had to do to earn that.
That's such a powerful insight, Dan, about you saying like I took that on because I did the same. I took it on. My daughter has taken it on, and now I see her just work, work, work. She can't take time off, and then I feel responsible for that actually now. And yeah, you're right. Our parents, we create the story that we think our parents want, and sometimes it's so wrong.
I'm so glad to be able to have that insight today and be able to have the relationship I have with him and
Yeah,
understand that, he's been my biggest coach from the beginning. I love it. It's just like I said, I hit the jackpot in the dad department and I didn't know it.
that's beautiful. You know what I did a few years ago? I went to visit my parents. This is right tail end of pandemic. And I ended up staying with them for 3 months. I did, like moved back in with them, or just to spend some time with them. It was amazing. But it
So
was during
you're
that
like in
time,
your how just for fun, what model year are you?
69.
Me too.
Ah, okay, there we go. Our fathers are the same age. We're the same age. How funny. You're just looking younger and better than me, but
You
that's
look
all
great, man.
right. So it's the yoga. So I was there at my parents' and one thing hit me. I realized like, yeah, I agree with you. I hit the jackpot with the father department. I have a great father. And I thought, and he's so knowledgeable and and wise, but I never ask him for advice. And it just hit me like that was my own arrogance. And so I thought, man, I should seek input from my dad. And I kick myself now because it was so foreign. And it was really about the question I'd asked him was because I'd gone through a divorce.
Mhm.
And I said, hey, can I ask you some advice? I said, for a guy my age, what should I be thinking of when I'm thinking about a partner? And, he weighed in, my mom weighed in. What they said was great. And, like the reason I didn't ask before was just my own, like, I always want to prove that I'm enough and that I'm okay and that you should respect me and just dropped all that ego stuff. And then I was like, hey, let me ask these people in my life who know me, love me, what they think. And now I try to do it all the time. Ask my father for advice.
Yeah, me too. That's
Mm.
what part of this thing I was talking about. Even on the silly stuff, even when I don't really necessarily think I need it, I go up there and talk to him about, here's what I'm getting ready to do, and we jostle it around, and that old joke about not being able to stop and ask for directions as a man, right? It's the
Yeah,
same
yeah, yeah.
concept of, I'm self-sufficient, I'm competent, I don't need the world's help. And when you actually are able to drop that down and ask people, like even in my world, I got some fantastic sponsees, and I would like, at some level put myself above them, right? Because
Hmm.
I'm their
Yeah, yeah.
sponsor. But
Yeah,
nah,
yeah,
these
yeah.
men that got, I can say to them today, hey, uh, here's what's going on. What do you think? What's your thoughts on this? And be able to get that feedback. And doesn't mean that I'm going to take it. Uh, but so many times, I run around with guys that are 25 and 30 years younger than me. It
Yeah.
feels weird. I don't feel like that. Like one of my sponsees is getting married in September, and he's asked me to be in his wedding, and he invited me to his bachelor party, and his kindergarten friend, the guy who had been a friend of his, lifelong friend, coordinated a trip down to Chattanooga, Tennessee, and we went out on a boat for the day, and we went tubing, being pulled behind a motorbike boat on an inner tube.
Yeah.
And I had 5 days. I go to yoga, like I said, and I do some high impact yoga, and I had 5 days of walking funny after that.
I
It
bet.
beat me to death, and I forget that I'm hanging around with guys that are that young, but uh, I love that span. I got an 87-year-old guy upstairs, and I got a 30-year-old best friend, best
Yeah.
friends, and I'm able to like listen to all those people and not be the dude who I at one point was, where I just didn't listen to really anybody. I thought I had to have it. I had to have my arms wrapped around it or,
Yeah.
and now I can say, help. Hey, what do you think? And get it from both directions. Older guys, younger guys, they got different insight.
That's the way to do it. I'm trying to break the cycle with my son so that he doesn't think like I thought with my own father. So
How old's he?
he's 25, and what I say to him the other day, actually, he had shared some stuff that he had felt bad about, and he texted me. It was some stuff with his school that he'd done and he didn't feel good about. So he texted me, and then at the end he said, "I don't need a lecture right now. I'm just letting you know." And I don't lecture him anyways. At least I don't think I do. But he felt like he had to say that. So I texted back. I said, "Hey, it's not my job to lecture you anymore. I am in your corner. I am your support. I'm here to bounce ideas off of. I'm here for you." And I want to keep that message up because I think that's going to be an important part of the relationship.
Yeah, yeah. I'm here to share my experience with you. That's all. I'll share
Yeah,
my experience. It's not a lecture, but it's hard to not think that way with your dad, right?
it's true. And
It's,
now I
it's
see also why my dad was doing certain things because with me, because when my kids do things that I see, I think they're operating below their talent level. I want to be like, you could be doing this, and my father did the same thing to me, but it's just because he saw talent in me that maybe I didn't see at the moment. One thing I did a few years ago that my kids loved is I would start telling them, "Hey, from time to time, I'm just going to share some of the biggest failures and mistakes I've made." Then I would just pick a story and tell it, and they just loved it. Like they loved hearing all of these stories of just screwing up, whether it was when I was their age or later. I don't know if it helped them learn anything, but they enjoyed the stories.
one of the coolest things I ever did, man. I set my dad on the other side of this table and turned on the recording equipment, and I spent 3 or 4 nights letting him tell me stories, and I recorded them
That's great.
from the beginning. And you can find them. They're on the Spiritual Underground podcast. If you're interested in doing that, you can find.
Fantastic.
I've got like I don't know, 6, 8 hours of episodes, separate
Amazing.
episodes of listen. And I wished I'd have done that with everybody in my family, man. I've been
Yeah,
on the
for
train.
sure.
I'm going today with the technology we have. Record your parents,
Yeah,
record them because they got
exactly.
great stories, man, and they're gonna get away from us, and
Yeah,
they're gonna be gone. And now I have my dad's voice telling me about being a hot rod teenager in the 50s, wrenching on
yeah.
cars and buying a car before he even had driver's license, and he had to let his friends drive it and just such cool stuff like that.
That's a great idea. A couple years ago, it was my father's birthday coming up, and what do you get your father, right, when they're turning 86 or 5 or whatever it was? Nothing really.
Love.
But I wanted to do something special for him. So what I did was for the week up to his birthday, every day I recorded a short video and I would send it to him. And it could be like, "Hey, I remember that time when you did this," or "Hey," it was always some memory that I had of, him taking me fishing or whatever. And I would
Man, that's
send
a
him
great
one
idea.
video a day. I didn't hear from him at all. I don't hear from him anyways, right? I didn't hear from him at all. But I'm like, I don't know if I was like throwing rocks into the Grand Canyon, right? Like, I don't know if this is having any impact. But so his birthday came, and then my birthday is 2 days later, and he called me. And my father has never told me he's loved me in my
Mm.
life. Not that I feel like I'm missing something, because I knew he loved me. He's just not that guy to say that. But he called me up. I answered the phone, and he immediately went into a story. He never does that. He said, "I remember the day you were born," and he starts telling me the story. And it was a really cool moment. And then he said, "And I love you." And I was like, that was the first
Oh,
time he said that in my life.
wow.
Again, not that I needed to hear that, but that was, I think, the impact of me just honoring him. That's what it was. I was just honoring him with these short little snippets. And man, I should probably do that again. It was a good time.
Yeah, I got the same kind of thing. I've always known my dad loved me,
Yeah.
but he didn't verbalize it, you know.
Yeah.
And like later on in life and this, that, I tell him I love him and he reflects it back, and uh without me, because I wasn't able to do that either
Yeah.
until I came into recovery. I wasn't able to tell him that. And my 21-year-old son lives with me. So, like in this house right now, because I'm divorced too, I'm very good friends with I don't like to use the word ex-wife. I like to use my kid's mom.
Okay, I like that.
Got more positivity than ex, you know?
A
So I try
kid's
to say
mom.
that. Yep, my kid's mom. And we're really good friends too. Matter of fact, I mean, like beautifully good friends. Matter of fact, we have entered into a domestic partnership so I can be on her insurance. And she offered
Wow.
that. Now, 10 years ago, when I crashed and burned, she'd have hung me from the nearest oak tree. Uh, but that's what recovery's done for me now. She said when I lost some things happened, this and that, and I didn't have any insurance, she said, "Hey, if we do this, you could, and if you just pay me the difference, it's cool." Now, great. But my
Nice.
dad, myself, and my 21-year-old son live here in this home, and uh, and I love it.
Yeah.
Me and Dustin, my son, had a good conversation last night, you know, and do I think he's living up to his potential? No. But you know, you have to you have to allow them their journey. That's another thing my sponsors told me, and that's the thing about sponsoring other men too. You have to allow and encourage people along their journeys. And uh, as you said, what can I give my dad for his birthday? I've learned the only thing I can really give my dad today is my love.
Yeah.
That's really
Yeah.
the only thing I can really do. I can buy him bullshit, you know, that he'll set up there. I make him stuff out of wood, you know, that says best dad. And uh,
For sure.
but all he
Uh,
really wants is that. He just
yeah.
wants my love.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great if my father was living here, we both wouldn't shower. We would we would probably do a lot of things that you know might not be best, but no, that's great. I'm glad he still has my mom to take care of him and
Yeah, my mom passed in 2016, and that's kind of how dad landed here. I
mm,
live in the house I grew up in.
really,
I bought it back from my parents when I was married and still had kids, and they were wanting to downsize, and we were could use some more space. And when I was in high school, we cut the roof off of this ranch house with my brother, and I, and we made a great room upstairs that's basically a studio apartment. You know, lo and behold, and this is I don't I might read into this stuff too much, but I roll with it. I like it. Lo and behold, some whole bunch of years later, he's moved into that studio apartment that we built so many years ago. Who'd have
nice.
known? Same thing. My dad, my brother, and I built a log cabin out in Orange County, Indiana, up against the Hoosier National Forest in 1999. And the three of us basically built it by hand with no electric. You know, we fired up a generator, we cut stuff with chainsaws, and we built it, not a kit. We built it from scratch, from the
Wow,
ground up. And it's a 20 by 40 cabin.
that's big.
It's not ham and egg, you know, it's not a little
Yeah,
shack.
yeah,
And that's where I have those men's retreats now, you know, and I look back and, you know, I use the word God pretty freely just because it's convenient. And I like, look what God was doing back then. Because now I have 30 men come out there and spend the weekend with me. And that's where I do, you know what a fifth step is? The fifth step of Alcoholics Anonymous is kind of like the confessional where you get all your skeletons out of the closet and it's a very private manner. I take my guys down there and that's where I have my fifth steps. I take them down there and we spend the night. My running joke is that I go to bed, I go to sleep with a different man than I wake up with. And I
yeah,
really
for
do,
sure.
because it's a life-changing moment and I get to do that today. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And men need to move their bodies when they're, you know, dealing with stuff and sharing stuff. I know that's a generalist statement, but it's hard for us to just sit and then share how we feel without ever moving. At some point, we got to do something with that energy. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
so is it like, you know, we would go out and kill the dinosaur and drag it in, and that's been for as long as ever, you know?
Yeah,
And we
exactly. That's
still do
that
it, except
therapy
for it
right
might
there.
be in a high rise and you're bringing home cash instead of meat. But we still have that internal thing to where we need to go out and like do things.
Yeah, we do. We do. And that's an important piece. I think it's tough for men today. There's just so many mixed messages. And that's why it's great when anyone is a catalyst for getting men together, like what you're doing, right? And any reason to get men together. I'm part of a workout group with men. It's called F3. It's stands for Fitness, Fellowship, Faith. It's not religious, just spiritual.
Isn't
And
it
it's all
funny?
over the country.
I'll just stop you right there. Doesn't it feel a little like apologetic that you're gonna include faith? Like they gotta have to like sideline that? Because I get the feeling you're a pretty faithful dude.
Well, I try to be, but
I
depends
mean,
who's
as
who.
things go, that's the thing. It's like a realistic faith that we have, right? I don't have
Yeah.
to be like all in and be whatever. I
Some
can,
of my
there's
some of
some
my
room for
Christian
here for me to have faith
well,
and
some of
not
my Christian
be,
friends would say I'm struggling, but it comes back down
because you
to
used to be a preacher, you said you
yeah, for
actually,
sure, for sure. When you're a preacher, you really got to be on the straight and
yeah.
narrow.
I just find that interesting that how we, because, and this is no knock on you, this is not what I mean, but I'm pretty free with my faith today, that I'm faithful and I have some belief in a higher power and I'm okay with sharing that with other people. And if you like it or don't, it don't matter to me. Uh, and I feel like you're the same way. You have something.
Yeah, for sure. It took me a while though, Dan, with so when I was a preacher, basically that's when I ended up going through divorce. And when you're a preacher and you go through a divorce, that's career ending. There's a lot of shame that you put on yourself, but that others
Yeah,
put on you also. And I won't get into the some of the stories, but of of how churches are just not great at handling divorces.
I agree.
And I get that because I've been on the other side before as well and been guilty of those. But I went to it's I guess you would call it a recovery group. So there's something in Christian circles called, I forget the name. It's basically for people who've gone through a divorce, and you can go to this small group thing. So I went. I felt so much shame the night I showed up and walked to this thing because I'm like, I used to once be a preacher, and now I'm like walking into this little tiny classroom for, kids, but with a bunch of other adults to talk about. But I tell you that, and I didn't even tell anyone that I'd been a preacher in there, but week after week, people would just share their stories of how once they got divorced, like their, stories like, well, you can't serve in the kids' ministry anymore, and oh, you can't hand out communion anymore. Like all these people sharing this. And
Rules.
finally, maybe 4 or 5 weeks in, I just said, hey, I used to be a preacher. So, um, and I felt so bad for everyone and how they'd been treated. And, it was just one of those moments. I don't know. I don't even know what I'm saying with this, but it was a lot of harm was done for the sake of religion, and it was so opposite of the example of my favorite scripture in John 8, where the woman gets caught in adultery, and everyone is like, "Well, here's the rule. We got to follow this rule," and Jesus is the one to say, "Well, great. Whichever one of you hasn't
Yeah.
sinned, go ahead, throw the first stone."
Yeah.
And I love how in that story it said the older guys left the first, and finally everybody left. And yeah, that to me is the faith I want to live in that
Yeah.
moment, right? That
Best,
yeah,
best
there's something
compliment
you should
ever.
do.
Well, this friend that I have that went to the bachelor party this weekend, his older brother is a pastor in his church. And he comes to our home group to celebrate this man's sobriety. And he says, this is what church should be. And this has happened multiple times where people's pastors have come to my men's home group and said, I wish I had this. I wish I could get this energy in my church. This is
Yeah.
this is what we ought to be doing instead of this petty baloney that where you go, well, I'm sorry, but you've had divorce and you can no longer be a, you know, spiritual
You're
leader in our group,
you're
Uh,
now disqualified. You're
yeah,
disqualified to serve.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like,
And that's a problem, it's and I think, I talk about religious trauma
yeah, for
as a
sure.
child of receiving this trauma that I carried into adulthood because I was given some faulty teachings, which I now thankfully have been able to reconcile and see, and I've had great teachers in my life to be able to like um, change those attitudes, but it could have crippled me for life.
Yeah. Yeah, I was a good preacher, but now I'd be 10 times better
Yeah,
after just
I can
all the
tell.
craziness, but some people, if I really told them all the stories, they would be tough for them.
I
So
bet it wouldn't. I
anyways,
bet it would be the opposite. I bet it would be there's people out there will be going just like we talked about earlier. I think
yeah,
that really what is
you're
needs to
right.
happen. They'd be go, okay, this man's real.
Yeah,
He's
you're right.
talking
You're right.
truth
For sure.
because none of us are walking some kind of path of that above holiness kind of baloney.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Well, we've been going 2 hour and 15.
Yeah,
I
if
love
any
talking to you,
if
man. I do. I feel so blessed that I
well, it's been great
can
chatting
meet
with you. I don't
guys.
know if anyone's still listening to us at this point, but if you are, that just kudos to you. Just let me say, thanks for hanging out with us.
They will be. Uh,
Okay,
I'm a
good.
long form guy too, man. I like to hear it. These stories like this and this chit chat is why I do this, and people do listen to the end. So the name of the book once more, and I'll put the show notes and all that.
Name of the
Hold,
book is The
hold it up.
Call to Climb. The Call to Climb. If you go to
It's
the
not out
website,
yet, though, right?
it comes out on August 5th, so I'm sure that you'll post this
Couple
after
more.
August
Today's
5th.
August 1st. Be coming out right about time this releases.
All right. If you go to the website, iwillclimb.com, that's how to get it. Iwillclimb.com. It's available at all the online retailers, of course. Yeah, if you do pick it up, thank you. And if you read it, love to hear what you think. Just let me know.
Yeah. I've enjoyed talking to you, man. I just we could I think I know that I could spend some time on the mountain or a pond or wherever with you, and it's so cool. It's just
Dan, if you get out to Colorado, I'm going to take you up a mountain. So that's my promise to you. You have my contact number. You let me know when you're out.
I
You're
will.
obviously in good shape as your yoga teacher, and I'll take you up a 14er. How's that?
Oh man, yeah. That's that'll send me off on a whole nother tangent. I had a buddy. I have a girl at work. This job. It was my old job, my new job. Her significant other just went out to Colorado just last month and did like 7 or 8 14ers. Is that
Oh,
possible?
it is. It's just not easy.
Yeah, and some of them were where he didn't go down and up.
Oh, yeah, yeah. There's a few
There's
like
apparently
that.
one region or some region where you can kind of wind around, but yeah, super cool
Yeah,
stuff.
the Caliburn. Yeah, you can get like four summits all in the same day.
Yeah.
There's no easy 14er. Even when they say this is the easier one, you get up to about 13,000 and then your body just starts talking to you. And, yeah, it's not
When we
easy.
go hunting at, it's about 12:05 is where we stop, and that's enough. You know it.
Yeah. Lugging
Uh,
rifles and all your stuff for sure.
yep, carrying a whole week's worth of food and tent and back and sleeping bag and all that up there and planning to stay. But it's an awesome experience to do that too.
Well, I'd love to have you out here. So just let me know.
I will. Thank you, James. It's great talking to you, man, and we'll keep in touch.
Sounds good, Dan.
All right, man. Thank you.